All your headlines this Monday night, now on ITV1. It's the news at 10.
The economy heading for the worst of all worlds, a warning from business leaders as growth flatlines. The CBI painted a bleak picture of early 2025 as revised figures show zero growth for Labour's first 3 months in office. Sectors like hospitality faring worse than expected.
I can't afford to just look around and give somebody else that job. It's just going down to myself and as just being a little bit more short-staffed.
PM responded saying economic prosperity won't happen overnight, but with growth his top priority, these are bad tidings for the end of the year. Also tonight. Luigi Mangione appears in a New York court over the killing of healthcare boss Brian Thompson. And a break from tradition, why the King chose a hospital chapel over a palace for this year's Christmas message.
This is ITV News with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. If the Chancellor was hoping for some Christmas cheer, well, there wasn't much for her today. Confirmation that the economy is flatlining came when growth figures for July to September, spanning Labour's first 3 months in office, were revised downwards, and the bleak news didn't stop there. The CBI, which represents tens of thousands of businesses, gave its economic prediction for next year. We're heading for the worst of all worlds. Well, in a moment, we'll have a look at what the government's strategy might now be if it's to achieve its priority of economic growth. But first, Ben Chapman reports from Lichfield.
In Lichfield city centre, shoppers were queuing up for those last-minute Christmas essentials. But ask them and businesses about the economy in 2025, and there's little hope for a happy new year.
You're a little bit more, we would say, fiffy. It's an expression, it just means you have to be a little bit more wiser in what you spend and how you spend.
Do you see that changing in the new year?
No, absolutely not. It's going to get worse.
It will impact things like probably less socialising and, less of the nice stuff like going out for meals.
There was nothing in today's latest figures to lift the gloom. The Office for National Statistics had estimated the economy grew by 0.1% between July and September, but it's revised that figure down to zero, meaning it didn't grow at all in the first few months of the Labour government. It was partly because fewer people were eating and drinking out. For this cafe, increases in the minimum wage and national insurance announced in the budget will push their prices up again, and Samantha has decided not to replace a member of staff who's leaving.
It's been quite a difficult decision to decide. I can't afford to replace her, so I can't afford to just look around and give somebody else that job. It's just being a little bit more short-staffed.
She's not alone, warns the business group the CBI, which says higher prices and fewer new jobs are the worst of all worlds. Labour had made growth its top priority.
We've only just got started. Labour's been in government now for a couple of months, but we have very significant plans going into 2025 and the years ahead to bring that stability and investment and reform to the British economy, which will stimulate growth in the years ahead.
But the Conservatives say the warning lights are flashing on the economy. The CBI predicts all industries will see decline early next year. Retailers expect shoppers to go on a spending freeze once the Christmas splurge is over. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Lichfield.
Well, our political correspondent, Shihab Khan, is here to talk further about this. We heard Darren Jones, Treasury Minister, in Ben's report there, saying the government has significant plans for 2025. We've had the budget, of course. What are we to expect then?
Yeah, well, at the moment, the government's position is that they inherited an economy that wasn't functioning properly. They're blaming their predecessors. They said they've had to make a number of very difficult decisions in their first half a year or so in office. That's why we're in this position. They say they wanted to stabilise the economy first And then there would be that priority of getting economic growth, of improving living standards, as we've heard the Prime Minister say so many times. The problem is that these stats suggest that the economy is not growing, but we've also had inflation figures which were a surprise and also went up. And now the CBI, as mentioned in that report, which is a leading business group in the UK, is warning that at the start of 2025 we may see a steep decline in business activity. The Conservatives keep reiterating that they believe that the economy was growing in their final months in office, and all of this has happened because of the Labour budget. When you've got inflation stats going the wrong way, when growth is flatlining, and now business groups are warning that the economy is flatlining, it's not good news for the government, who will now need to act quickly if they're going to get the economy growing next year.
OK, Shihab, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of murdering a healthcare boss in New York, was escorted in shackles into court today. He pleaded not guilty. There was concern inside court and protests outside it for a case that has captured the attention of millions in America. Mark McQuillan reports.
This is the man at the centre of a case that has shocked corporate America. Luigi Mangione heading to court in Manhattan to face multiple charges in relation to the fatal shooting of a healthcare boss. Inside the courtroom, the 26-year-old denied the charges.
Not guilty.
It was on the morning of December the 4th when the brazen killing took place. Brian Thompson shot whilst on his way to a conference in Manhattan. He was the chief executive of United Healthcare, America's largest health insurance company. It led to a huge manhunt, which ended at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania.
Healthcare is a human right. We shouldn't have to fight.
The case has caused divisions and, for some, brought healthcare provision into the spotlight, while Mangione's lawyer has concerns over the trial.
He's a young man, and he is being treated like a human ping pong ball between two warring jurisdictions here. These federal and state prosecutors are coordinating with one another, but at the expense of him.
In response, the judge said Mangione would be guaranteed a fair trial. He is next due in court in February.
Luigi, you want to say something?
If convicted of the charges, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
The US House Ethics Committee has accused the politician who Donald Trump had as his first pick for Attorney General of violating multiple state laws, including sex trafficking, while in office. The committee's report claims Matt Gaetz, a former Republican congressman, regularly paid for sex with women, including an underage girl. He's also accused of buying illegal drugs while representing Florida. Mr. Gaetz resigned last month and has denied all allegations. Honda and Nissan, household names and titans of the Japanese car industry, are on the verge of merging to form what would be the world's third largest auto company. It's a move which promises to have a huge impact on the automotive sector and underlines the threat posed by Chinese electric vehicle makers. Sam Holder reports.
But in the end, not all are built like this.
The Honda Civic, one of the best-selling cars of all time. For decades, the Civic and other Japanese cars were seen as the ultimate in reliability. But in response to sliding sales, Honda and its rival Nissan, and potentially Mitsubishi too, have agreed in principle to join forces, combining to become the third biggest car manufacturer in the world. The Honda CEO says the merger is in response to tectonic changes in the industry and that the future of transport is now AI and electric cars. Japanese companies have been slow to adapt to the electric car market, which accounts for a fifth of cars sold worldwide. They face tough competition from Chinese companies who have better tech and can offer far cheaper models.
Well, the Chinese are 10 years ahead of us when it comes to batteries and electric cars. And all that time ago, when people were laughing in Europe at Elon Musk, they were thinking this is the future. So they really did control supply chains and get battery technology up to some of the highest levels.
In 2021, Nissan announced a £2 billion plan to build electric cars at its Sunderland factory. The companies will now develop technologies together, but are likely to save costs by cutting jobs. The £40 billion merger may still not go ahead, but it's a sign that without change, major car brands risk being overtaken by their nimbler Chinese rivals. Sam Holder, ITV News.
The supermarket giant Morrisons has apologised over system issues that caused shopping chaos on one of the busiest days of the year. Many customers had their deliveries postponed or cancelled at short notice this morning, while loyalty card users were also unable to claim the discounts they were entitled to. Morrisons is offering extra discounts until stores close tomorrow. Finally, when the King's Christmas message is broadcast on Christmas Day, the backdrop will not be Buckingham Palace or any other royal residence. Instead, it'll come from a former hospital chapel in central London. It is, in part, to recognise the royal family's year battling cancer. The King said he wanted somewhere spiritual that brought communities together, and it's understood he was bowled over by the chapel's beauty. Here's our royal editor, Chris Shipp.
Surrounded by new apartments, you could quite easily miss Fitzrovia Chapel, tucked away in a busy part of central London. Inside, however, no one could fail to be impressed, just as the King was earlier this month, by the marble and gold leaf ceiling with more than 500 stars. It was here that King Charles stood to record this year's Christmas broadcast, an unusual location away from the traditional royal residence. Instead, a former hospital chapel, deliberately chosen to reflect a year of health challenges for both him and the Princess of Wales.
He was pretty surprised and kind of delighted from coming in, discovering it. With the particular year that the family have had, the chapel's connection to the hospital and to the wider kind of healthcare profession, the medical profession, is what made it the choice for them.
The old hospital was demolished, leaving the chapel standing on its own, but it retains a link with the new hospital, the one the King visited in April when he restarted public engagements and met fellow cancer patients. So on Christmas Day, his speech is likely to reference his own cancer journey and Gaetz. The princess has finished her chemotherapy and is returning to royal engagements.
For many years, this tiny chapel just moments from Oxford Street was a place of prayer and contemplation for medics and patients from the hospital which stood next door. The King wanted this year's Christmas message to be away from a palace.
This location and the King's thoughts on communities which came together following the summer riots are expected to feature in the speech. Everything else is under wraps until Christmas Day. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Fitzrovia Chapel.
And that's it for tonight. From all the team here, good night. We will see you tomorrow.
If you've been glued to TikTok this year, or even if you've never used it, this is the very best of 2024's clips.